In Miami, Zoya is in the hospital because doctors found a black hole growing in her chest. With no cure available, she has only 1 week left to live. The doctors tell Zoya's husband Donald, her daughter Jane, and her son-in-law to take her home so she can spend her final days with family. On the way home, the family tries to distract Zoya with conversation and music, but she stays lost in her own thoughts. They keep trying to help her feel comfortable, but Zoya, who isn't an invalid, mostly gets annoyed. Before moving forward, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It will help us keep bringing your favorite movie recaps. The next day, they visit the publishers responsible for the couple's science books. The publishers assume Zoya will recover and insist on discussing the unfinished final chapter of her latest book. Later, the family meets with their lawyer to handle Zoya's will and other necessary paperwork. They also take her to the beach and a massage parlor to help her relax, but nothing seems to make much difference. Eventually, Zoya visits her mother Sandra at the retirement home, but Sandra only watches television and doesn't speak. Feeling tired of it all, Zoya steps outside and eats a piece of fruit while sitting on a bench. At that moment, another resident approaches Zoya, and she warns her about incoming bird poop just in time for the lady to avoid it. When the lady asks how she knew, Zoya explains that she has been reliving the same week repeatedly by taking caplets she discovered as a child. Each time, she wakes up in the hospital, and her family puts her through the same events, including a conversation with this lady. By the end of the week, her family surprises her with a birthday cake, and she pretends to be surprised even though she already knows. At that moment, her nose starts bleeding. Zoya hides in the bathroom, takes the caplet, and resets time, instantly disappearing. The next time she meets the lady, she saves her from the bird poop again, but doesn't reveal how. Later, while visiting her mother, they watch the news about the last one-horned rhino arriving in Miami. Zoya tells her mother the rhino will die by the end of the week, but her mother shows no reaction. Frustrated, Zoya doesn't warn the lady about the bird poop this time. Annoyed by the repetitive conversations, Zoya walks away and accidentally bumps into Paula, causing her to drop her belongings. Zoya notices Paula is reading one of her old books and asks where she got it. Paula shows her the retirement home's library, explaining that many of the books were donated by residents. Zoya finds several books from her youth, left behind by Sandra. Paula explains she chose Zoya's book because she's studying time while working under a professor at a university lab. Before Zoya can say more, Donald arrives to take her home, and Zoya brings the book with her. In the evening, Zoya cries while complaining about her routine and wonders if reviving her old research could give her a chance to survive. Donald thinks she's wasting her last few days in the lab, so he takes her to the living room for a surprise birthday cake. When Zoya's nose starts bleeding, she goes outside and calls Paula using the number in the book. She promises Paula that she'll find her soon to do something great, then takes the caplet to reset the week. When Zoya wakes up in the hospital, she tells Jane and Donald to sign the paperwork while she gets ready to leave. As soon as they're gone, she sneaks out of the room while everyone is distracted by the game. She escapes through the fire exit, hails a cab, and promises to pay when she gets home. Minutes later, she retrieves hidden keys outside her house, enters, and packs her caplets, books, and some clothes into a suitcase. After changing into fresh clothes, she steps outside to pay the driver, but the cab is already gone. Zoya then goes to see Paula, who doesn't recognize her due to the reset. Zoya explains everything, but Paula doesn't believe her and tests her by asking how many fingers she's holding up. Zoya guesses wrong and resets the week again. This time, she pays the taxi driver. During the next meeting, Paula tests her again, but Zoya correctly predicts all the hand gestures, the cat's meowing, and Paula's next questions, proving she's been through the same conversation many times before. Paula finally believes Zoya and agrees to help her. They head to the university, where Zoya explains that she started researching how the caplets worked 30 years ago, but had to quit due to life's challenges. She can only take one caplet at a time because the effects don't stack. The first caplet needs to leave her system before another one works. Zoya admits her goal is to fix her life, giving herself more time to achieve the greatness she once dreamed of. The lab and equipment are outdated, but they decide to make do. Zoya shares what she knows. The caplets don't burn, melt, or dissolve. They seem to exist in a constant state of regeneration, as if trapped in limbo. Paula wants to study the regeneration process to break it down, but Zoya explains it's happening at a subatomic level. Instead, she suggests replicating the process, just as she had attempted in her youth. They argue over the next steps until Paula gets an idea and leaves the lab to seek help. While Paula is gone, Zoya receives a call from Donald, but chooses to ignore it. Feeling guilty, she tries to leave the lab, but runs into Dulsberg, her old university professor. Dulsberg is surprised to see her and invites her to his office, where he discovers Paula rummaging through his desk. He panics, and Paula claims she's working with Zoya and is only kind of a student there, which confuses Zoya. Dulsberg grows furious, accusing Zoya of wasting her potential. He recalls being impressed by her test scores, expecting her to become someone great, only to feel disappointed by what he sees as laziness and entitlement. He kicks both women out of his office. Outside, Paula tries to comfort Zoya, urging her not to take Dulsberg's harsh words to heart. Zoya admits he was right. She was lazy because she relied on resetting time to pass her exams. Paula then reveals the box she stole from the professor's office. Inside is a nanoscopic man. The experiment had successfully shrunk a person, but they couldn't stop the process, so he continues to shrink even now. To work with him, the duo moves to a cold, dry aging room to avoid bacteria and mold affecting the box. For the man, 100 years pass in just a few seconds in the normal world. Paula plugs the box in, allowing the man to communicate using a transmitter in his suit. His messages appear on a small screen, and he can also receive them. His suit has a particle detector, so they drop a caplet into the box for him to analyze. After a few seconds of shaking, strange code appears on the screen and the connected computer. Paula examines it and confirms Zoya's suspicion. The caplet is constantly changing, cycling through various structures. That evening, Zoya stays at Paula's and reveals she found the bottle of caplets when she was 12, walking on a golf course. It was lying there with her name on it. She didn't see anyone around but heard a voice saying, "You'll change the world." Over the next few days, the duo experiments with different methods to understand the caplets, but makes little progress because the old equipment keeps breaking. Zoya repeatedly resets the week, escapes the hospital each time, and recruits Paula to start over. In some resets, Zoya takes time to visit her family. When Jane, feeling anxious about teaching music to kids instead of pursuing her dream as a composer, confides in Zoya, she encourages Jane to keep playing in her free time until her big break comes. Zoya's story is rooted in her childhood, when she used to promise her dad she would become a scientist like him. Despite multiple resets, her research shows no progress, leaving her scared she won't succeed even with unlimited time. One morning, before Zoya recruits Paula, her real situation becomes clear. The professor she was supposed to work with suddenly went on sabbatical, leaving her without another option for the year. After many resets, Zoya and Paula sit in the lab waiting for a small explosion while discussing alternatives. Paula finds it odd that Zoya never got support for her research in the past. Zoya admits that after graduation, she didn't join a European science program like her classmates. Her father, Donald, had told her to make sure it would make her happy, and that made her realize she didn't enjoy experimentation. She just wanted to figure out the caplets. When Paula asks about her old research, Zoya remembers it was left with her mom's belongings. Suddenly, Zoya's nose starts bleeding, and she takes the caplet to reset the week. She goes through the usual steps to recruit Paula, and together, they visit the retirement home to look through her mom's old boxes. They find Sandra's psychology papers and a newspaper article about Zoya's ex, Mark, and his NASA research, but nothing related to Zoya's work. While deciding what to do next, a nurse tells Zoya that Donald is searching for her and is in tears. When Zoya tries to find him, he's already gone. On her way back, she reflects on the day she told Donald she wasn't joining the European program. He wanted her to go because it was a great opportunity. He only told her to do what made her truly happy after she said she had no intention of changing her mind. After a few resets, Zoya begins to feel the toll of the lack of emotional support. She misses her family, and it gets harder to leave them behind repeatedly. Meanwhile, her family keeps preparing the surprise cake, but Zoya never shows up. She wonders if they're just standing there through every reset, waiting for her. After hundreds of resets, Zoya realizes she's stuck in another dull routine. She announces that they've tried everything, so there's no point in continuing. Paula insists they shouldn't give up and urges Zoya to ask Mark for help, but Zoya only wants to be with her family. Paula snaps, pointing out that she risked her job and stole the little man for a stranger who showed up at her apartment one morning. Paula admits she also wants to go back in time to fix her life and then storms out of the room. Zoya follows her, and Paula hands her the caplets. Paula confesses she didn't dare take one because she was afraid she'd end up with a black hole inside her body. Paula reveals her reason for wanting to go back. When she was 15, she took her parents' car without permission and drove over a nail. She put the car back, thinking her parents would find the nail and remove it. But they didn't, and the tire blew out, killing them. Determined to help Paula, Zoya promises to find Mark. That night, Zoya shares her own story. She found the caplets a week after her dad died and tried to go back to save him, but she always woke up a day after his death. Zoya tells Paula she feels like a failure for not living up to her dad's expectations, but Paula reminds her that writing plenty of books is a big achievement. Suddenly, Zoya's nose starts bleeding, and she resets the week, disappearing from Paula's room. When Zoya wakes up, she gathers her things and decides to visit Dulsberg instead of Paula. She confronts him, admitting she can be lazy or impatient, but she's trying her best and needs Mark's help to move forward. Impressed by her determination, Dulsberg gives her Mark's address. Zoya heads to the airport and thinks about the last time she saw Mark. They had met at a class reunion, where their conversation felt awkward and strained because of their different lives. Zoya had even felt insulted by Mark's comments. When she finally arrives at Mark's house, his son Chris answers the door with devastating news. Mark has died. He worked constantly without eating or sleeping, which destroyed his health. Chris takes Zoya to Mark's office, where she finds herself surrounded by his research, awards, and her old notebooks. Chris reveals he hates the office because Mark always claimed his work would make Chris proud, but all Chris wanted was a father. Zoya offers him a hug to comfort him. As she sifts through her old notebooks, she notices she used to write Donald's name on the pages. Memories of their dating days flood back, and she realizes what truly matters to her. Determined, Zoya listens to all the messages in her voicemail. Joyce and Donald sound increasingly desperate, pleading for her to come back. In the final messages, they cry and beg to see her one last time before it's too late. Zoya breaks down as her nose bleeds, and she notices a black hole growing in her chest. She frantically searches for her caplets to reset time one last time. When she wakes up, she runs out of her room, hugs her daughter, and apologizes. On the way home, she behaves warmly and eagerly joins the conversation. That night, she sleeps with Donald and asks if he believes they've lived a good life. He says yes without hesitation. Over the next few days, Zoya feels more energetic and participates in family activities. She updates her will to donate all her books to the retirement home, takes Donald to a massage parlor where they hold hands, and enjoys a joyful day at the beach with her family. During a visit to Sandra, she takes her to see the rhino before it dies. On her final day, Zoya visits Paula, handing her the caplets and her research. She realizes that true greatness lies in passing her work to the next generation rather than chasing glory. Later, Paula discovers a note in the notebook with a Princeton contact for support. That evening, Zoya celebrates her birthday with her family, happily eating cake. This time, her nose doesn't bleed, and she stays in the room. Jane brings her a present, an ultrasound showing she is pregnant, and she plans to name the baby Zoya. Overcome with joy, Zoya hugs her daughter, but pulls back when her nose starts bleeding. She apologizes for not always being there, kisses Donald, and tells everyone she loves them. Suddenly, time freezes except for the ticking clock. Zoya vanishes in a blur, symbolizing her death, and reappears in the past, telling her younger self the words she remembers hearing when she first picked up the bottle. And that's how the movie ends. What did you think? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon for more amazing videos. See you next time.